Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session, and thank you for joining. This session is Freedom with Guardrails, Enabling PLM Processes Step by Step. Today's webinar is hosted by IPX, the Institute for Process Excellence, along with our special guest, Upchain. I would like to introduce you to today's presenters. We have IPX President Joseph Anderson and Upchain's Vice President of Partner Enablement for Enterprise, James White. A recorded version of today's session will be available. Following Joseph and James's presentation, we should have time for a few questions. If we do not get to your questions during the time allotted, please type them into the question box and they will be answered via email from either IPX or Upchain following the webinar. For anyone who is just signing in, hello and welcome to today's session, Freedom with Guardrails, Enabling PLM Processes Step by Step. Thank you for joining us. With that, I will turn it over to Joseph.
Thanks, Deanna, and thanks everyone for joining. Really excited about today's session. As Deanna mentioned, we have James White from Upchain joining us. I've known James for quite a while through various career endeavors, and quite frankly, I feel like James is one of the leading visionaries in the additive manufacturing, true digital enterprise spectrum. So quite pleased to have you, James. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Joe, and very excited to be invited to participate in this event. Yes, we have been involved with each other in different career experiences, but I think there's a lot of congruence actually between IPX and what Upchain is doing in the market.
All right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. This is going to not be your typical webinar. We're not going to just do a slide reading. We're going to have an open dialogue between James and myself, and we hope to reserve some time for questions at the end. So here we go.
Yeah, sort of a virtual fireside chat.
Absolutely. So James, through the years, you and I have had many discussions about really the future of the digital enterprise or the organization, whether it's a small startup all the way into a very large global enterprise with a very large connected supply chain, multiple sites spread out around the world. And you and I have really had some great discussions about that. And the reality is it's not just about buying a new software tool. It's not just about expanding your footprint to a lower cost site. It's really about investing in a new business model. Can you just give us a little bit of background and your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's exactly right. I mean, PLM, as we know, Joe, it's been around a long time, but in our experience, traditional PLM systems restrict the creative processes of product stakeholders like engineers. So Upchain's thesis is that the better products are an outcome of creativity, innovation, and corporate governance. And all three of those things need to be in harmony. Think of it as a triangle, but each of those things are sort of in tension with each other. Traditional PLM systems are very, very good at the governance part, but often at the expense of individuals' creativity or the work group's performance, and therefore innovation is compromised. So really the theme of this webinar and key words like freedom and guardrails really is trying to elucidate the freedom that's needed by the creative process of people, but also the corporate needs for governance, which is the guardrails. And so we seek to kind of optimize and balance those three things so that creativity, innovation, and corporate governance are all in balance, and that we believe leads to higher quality, more innovative products.
Yeah, and this has always been a big topic for me, and it's something I've been passionate about. The first 20 years of my career were really rolling out global processes and systems over 128 sites and having common PLM solutions across all your sites, trying to connect it to your supply chain. And the one thing that I want to kind of drive home, and I think you touched on it a little bit, is PLM as a methodology. It's not just a system. And I do believe what we've seen over the last 10 to 15 years is the majority of companies that say they've deployed PLM, if you really look at what capability they've deployed so far at this stage, is really kind of a PDM and a change management functionality. They really haven't got all the way into true PLM, whether that's having an integrated solution, a platform, the promise of one system out of the box that magically you pour out your cereal and put some milk on it and PLM works. We're seeing companies actually start to invest in the true meaning of what people, processes, systems, and data stands for. And I think that's something that when I look at the Upchain's kind of model here, and we've talked about, the even the slogan of Upchain, from imagination to change, has kind of been intriguing for us. For most of our attendees, they're aware that we work with all solution providers. We have a solution certification process, and the one thing that I'm fascinated by, James, is the reality is you appear to be grasping and telling your clients, listen, you must invest in the workforce, the processes. You need to identify the systems that you need and the data elements, but you really are a champion of the people, the processes, the systems, and data at its core.
Well, exactly, and to your point that there's been a promise that one single solution will do it all. We do not believe that's possible, frankly, and that's led that belief has led to a lot of disappointment or under-met performance of enterprise PLM systems. Before I just sort of speak to that slide there, I'd just like to comment that there's a big shift, not just in the PLM software and services industry, but really the industrial market. We're seeing a lot of industry trend towards a very big disruption in the whole way products are made. We're seeing that ODMs, original or outside design manufacturers, suppliers, subcontractors, are moving up the chain, and OEMs are really issuing specifications. They're doing the R&D, issuing specifications, and procuring in semi-autonomous modules, subsystems, which they aggregate together into the whole product. So that's a big change, and traditional PLM systems were never sort of architected or envisioned this fact that a high percentage of the OEM's product is actually from external companies. And so that's where this graphic we're looking at now, this sort of circular depiction of product lifecycle management, comes from. And right in the bullseye we see there is the idea, and ideas belong to people, and people need access to data. So on the left is the kind of the feeder into the core, the target. And if you look there, you see, there's raw data sets coming from different systems, business systems, engineering systems, design tools. And often these are disparate. They were done at different times. And then people belong to different organizations, from executives to down on the factory floor to engineering design tool offices. And they have very different expertise, but there's no sovereignty to a good idea. And unfortunately, because the enterprise PLM systems, traditional ones, are so good at the governance, they often clip out the formation or the capture of a good idea, and we only adopt that which has got time to be assessed and implemented. And so what we do is we've architected the software to enable this kind of model. Central is the idea. That idea radiates out through the organizational structure and outside the organization into the ODMs and the suppliers, subcontractors, boutique consulting, and then feedback comes back in, and then it goes around the circular process through the traditional engineering and manufacturing departments and processes to launch a product in the market, and then that continues again. So it's a non-stop process where we believe this leads to better innovation because ideas are formally captured by anyone by any time, and then assessed, ranked, and potentially adopted into individual products or families of products, which is the ideal state. And that's really the difference we're seeing. And when that is in line with the industry shift that we're seeing towards the use of outside ODMs for product development.
Which ties into where we're headed next. And to me, we've kind of, the terms digital transformation, Industry 4.0, digital thread, digital twin, additive manufacturing, AI, AR, they've really kind of been the new marketing, I don't want to say gimmick, but strategy for solution providers, to really push what I feel is, for the most part, the same message, except for a few solution providers as yourself, where at the end of the day, if you don't invest in the way you look at your business model from your operating standards, that those processes, those procedures, the data model, where you're going from kind of that OEM to ODM type network. If you don't invest in that, it doesn't really matter what you do with your tool. You know, and I know, James, you and I have talked about this. It's something that IPX has championed for a long time. Great solutions, great tools, great software, they will enable bad processes just as efficiently and effectively as they will good processes.
Mm-hmm.
And can you talk about that in this kind of promised new future, what that means from Upchain's perspective? Is this just another gimmick for marketing and branding, or do you truly champion change with clients?
Yeah, well, right. And you know, we're a software company, we're a SaaS software company, and we're advocating enterprise PLM one work group at a time. And that sounds kind of chaotic because, to your point, if we didn't have governance ourselves as an organization and we didn't provide the guidance to our customers, then we could be just automating bad processes. And then when we go on to the next work group, we claim success in that work group. We go on to another. They've got their own evolved processes, which may be not congruent or incongruent with the first work group, and so on. So the way we avoid that simply automating bad processes one after the other is we need this technology agnostic consulting services to help the customers organize their data, their tools, their processes, and their human organization, because, you know, I guess sadly, organizations have evolved in individual groups, like kind of tribes that have, and often polarized around their preferred or their standard tool or system of choice, be it ERP or supply chain or MES system on the factory floor or their CAD system. Those things often the organization forms around those tools and systems, and they were never organized to work together, notwithstanding the claims about digital thread and closed loop and Industry 4.0, as this image points to or indicates. There's a whole lot of lost IP or IP at risk because it exists on thumb drives, it exists on individuals' laptops who takes it home each day in their car or goes on a plane somewhere. It's often emailed around on spreadsheets, and this is core product corporate IP, which is a very big risk. And we see product failures in the market, and it's often for these kind of reasons that the IP was known, the issue was known, but it wasn't communicated back to the right people at the right time, and products fail in the market because of it. And so this is really underpinning the partnership, if you like, between IPX with a technology agnostic assistance to clients and our software, which automates the one work group at a time, one after the other, very easily and fast to provide returns rapidly as they're identified, but along a longer term vision and roadmap that would be an outcome of, for example, an IPX assessment or something like that.
So, I mean, and from my understanding, what I'm hearing you really say is you're champions of integration. Right, not just process from a system and data interoperability. It's true integration.
It's absolutely true integration, but also a very flexible data model that we'll get onto next. So, that trend we talked about procured and content representing a lot of product IP. Well, we've engineered the system to deal with this heterogeneous data and process landscape, but also a very flexible data model to allow you to do things. And we don't have that legacy because we don't have decades of CAD integrations or big customers driving our product roadmap. We're SaaS from the beginning, so everything's modern, very extensible, scalable to massive scale, and very easy to integrate because it's all about modern industry standards.
And that really kind of brings us to this slide. And this is something I know you and I have had some very passionate discussions about. It's really about, understanding our past best practices when it comes to designing and building and looking ahead. And I would really like you to expand upon that from, kind of the as imagined all the way to the as service, and where DFAM's headed?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, design for additive manufacturing, design for manufacturing. You know, we talk about the multi-thousand-year model where things are the actual product's designed for its manufacturability, from pyramids to modern smartphones. It's all about the ability to manufacture. So oftentimes the envisioned product is compromised to make that which is manufacturable. Now, sort of fast forward to what we mentioned before about the shift to using outside suppliers of discrete modules and subsystems. This means that something that was previously in this pyramid here, say a subsystem, the blue middle tier, is now essentially becoming a component, the component being the simplest form or the simplest element inside a product. And that whole pyramid is the whole product, comprising component, subsystem, and systems that all work together to perform the whole product. So because something that could be a restraint device in a seat in a car, or a blind spot assist unit, or airbags, these are coming into the OEM automotive company from expert discrete suppliers that only do airbags, blind spot assist, or restraint systems in seats. And the OEM's job is to aggregate all of these, and in a car sense, there may be 100 intelligent systems that all have to present unified, common sense data to the driver through one dashboard all the time. So it's an extremely complex system, but the point is that these subsystems, they may be 500, 1,000 individual components in themselves, with firmware on board, with software, perhaps cloud services, but they're entering into the OEM often as a single SKU or a single component. And because all of the IP and all of the access and all of the BOM structure belongs to that external supplier. So this presents an enormous challenge to traditional PLM systems that envision that the OEM owns and authored most of the content. Therefore, it's accessible to undergo change or BOM management or workflows or roles and so on. So we've taken that into account, and we can aggregate and have this mixed data set that we can manage and perform all the usual PLM functions. So it's a very big deal that something like a subsystem is now treated like a component, and that brings a lot of economies of scale and simplicity throughout the life cycle of a product, because we're not having to hold those 500 or 1,000 components and deal with software and firmware that are actually inside that single component because it's coming from outside. So that simplifies the maintenance and life cycle cost and time because of that, because of the simplicity of that. And then when you consider one aspect of what's going on in the industry, the trend towards additive manufacturing being used for industrial purpose, that is printing the final end product for production use, that's absolutely a big deal there, because you're often being able to print something that's currently 20 or 30 components in itself as an assembly or a subsystem. Now it's being printed as one single body, one single component, which totally eliminates many of the downstream processes, maintenance, inspection, points of failure, inventory, because it's now becoming one thing. So that's another big aspect that we're also managing and seeing as a trend in the future.
And that really draws home a point that I know you've heard me speak on at events and in some of our other sessions, and it comes to this whole digital thread concept, and I know it's really just trying to it's terms used to try to describe at a very high level what I think you were just touching on. And for us at IPX, it's much more complicated than just a single thread of that you're just magically going to connect things and it's just going to be this line of information. For us, it's DNA. It's a very complex. You have multi-strands. You have you have very complex molecules. Your business is just like a human organism, right? It's at the end of the day, it's very complex. Your DNA for your enterprise is massive, and being able to go in, assess where you're at, refine those areas that need improved, but also connect it from a system perspective, that's quite empowering. And from an AI perspective, and at IPX, we discuss AI as being more than just artificial. It's action-based, it's autonomous, it's adaptive. What I'm hearing from perhaps from the Upchain model is eventually you're going to get to the point where some of these processes, some of these connected work groups will be able to benefit from some true AI capability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this slide because it couldn't be a more extreme dichotomy, if you like. There's something that we're all familiar with, our smartphone probably in our pocket, and something as complex as a DNA molecule. But there is a linkage there, and that's where AI comes in our product architecture. But just first on the DNA metaphor there, yes, it's extremely complex, and PLM traditionally seeks to address the entire DNA of the company, if you like, all strands, all molecules, all stages of throughout. We don't. We feel that's just too ambitious and has led to this undermet vision of many PLM deployments. What we seek to do is look at individual strand or strands and then automate those if they're analogous to workflow processes in manufacturing. But we don't do DNA, meaning we don't study that. That's where IPX comes in, that can see the entire landscape, all strands, and then we look at the outcome of those studies, and then we can automate individual nodes or molecules or strands all the way through it. But the linkage here to the imagery of an iPhone or a smartphone is this, that something we're all familiar with it, and we somehow just accept AI applications like, for example, when you're in traffic in your car and using an iPhone Maps, it sometimes prompts you and says, I found a faster route that saves you 6 minutes, and all you have to do is say accept, and it optimizes the route. So that sort of logic we apply into Upchain, and it's becoming more and more. So we are seeking to look for those opportunities to improve throughput, for example, through design end-to-end, design through manufacturing, without any human, doing menu picks or clicks or commissioning processes, just the system in background, looking for these opportunities to improve process throughput, improve performance or quality, or in another case with some of our Bay Area clients, we're looking at a sort of a pattern recognition throughout the entire global stakeholder network and looking for those in-service products and looking at the alerts that might occur through a service call, and then just without any human intervention, taking those service calls, which are attached to working components in product, and then looking for patterns like, what if a particular component has failed in 5 different locations all within the past week? Then the owner of that design bomb or the quality department that approved that design bomb might want to know that. And so we're looking at things like that just provide the salient information without a human doing menu picks and clicks, and just presenting them with the equivalent of, hey, we've found a faster route that saves you 6 minutes. We're sort of looking at ways to apply that into a PLM sense.
And from the bullet 3, the holistic product data model, for us, it's something we call integrated process excellence. And then on the collaboration platform, that's something IPX has championed now for the last 30 years, is having a true enterprise collaboration platform, from a process and from a system perspective. This is quite empowering. How do you envision over the next 3 years, Upchain really bringing to market more advanced ways for industries across the globe to collaborate across the supply chain?
Yeah. So, and then we get onto it in a slide or two on our roadmap, exactly what we're doing. But really in the core of our system, the DNA of our system, if you like, is our data model. And a familiar term to, I think, some of the attendees on this webinar will be the concept of a data cube. At Upchain, we actually have a 12-sided cube, which really, I guess, means it's a dodecahedron or something. But really, that's how we accomplish these one work group at a time process automation without it being hard coded as discrete modules or products that a customer buys. At the user configuration level, using this underlying 12-sided data model, a user or an IT systems person or a power user, for example, could easily, depending on what their need is, associate a BOM with a collaboration, with an item, with a user profile, and create their own virtual, call it mini PLM solution for their needs very rapidly. Or if that could be in engineering, but somebody further downstream in the factory floor, they may be more document centric, and their job may be making jigs and fixtures or plant layout equipment. They might also take the BOM and the workflow components of the data model, but more interested in their customer and associating with document control, item control, and work orders. And so basically a 12, I think that means math-wise it's 12 to the power of 12 possibilities. And that's how we rapidly achieve what is traditionally offered to the market in discrete modules that are often developed for one customer and then productized and released to the market. And this basically gives the control without having to bring in one of the top 5 SIs, gives the control. But again, a customer doesn't know how to do that. They can do it if they had the roadmap, and that's where we rely on like IPX to come in with the true north calibration model to find out what those workflows are appropriate and how they all should line up together. And then we can rapidly enable that which the customer says they need attention to first.
And that really kind of brings me to, the CM2 kind of mentality, which is true ecosystem traceability. That's understanding that CM2 is much more than just change management. It's truly about enterprise requirements management, BOM management, enterprise collaboration. It's the full product lifecycle and the integrations, the product structure, and then the enterprise of what we would call administrative structure from requirements, having all of those linkages, the integrations in the right structures, the ability to quickly assess what a change could mean to a top level requirement from the government or a component. And for us, CM2 is kind of the holy grail for achieving the model-based enterprise. And it sounds like, your data model is kind of built for this type of a structure, which is you understand the importance of requirement.
Well, exactly. And it's not just the software that's going to do it, right? It's not just buy some clients, buy a subscription from Upchain, and bam, you've got CM2. It needs this organization and assessments of the tools, the processes, the systems, and the human organization. But like you and I, Joe, we've kind of been around this a long time, and some attendees on this webinar may know CM2 to be, well, those 5 guys, in the back office that they come into meetings sometimes. That 20, 30 years ago was that very deep science. You find some individuals that are CM2 qualified at big industrials, but that when you just consider that trend that's occurring that we touched on, going from components at the bottom of the pyramid, now dependence on ODMs and suppliers, discrete module suppliers into the company. CM2 has never been more important. It's no longer just that original architecting the product structure in the OEM. It's now dealing with these system of systems of how products are made today. So it's even more important than ever for CM2 to be respected, organized around CM2 principles throughout the entire ecosystem, not just 5 guys at the OEM that do the big thought, big definition of the product in the beginning, and thereafter, just work on new things. It's becoming a life cycle thing from end to end, inside and outside the firewall, throughout the entire product ecosystem. And that's why, frankly, we need to have our clients educated, trained on CM2 standards. And I haven't seen it before in my 30-year career in this. It's only in the past few years that I'm seeing people in high tech in Silicon Valley, aerospace up in Everett, Washington, Michigan, the automotives. Now there's a lot more different roles of people now seeking training and education on CM2 standards because it's become this life cycle thing.
To autonomy with governance, and some will say balance. I like to say harmony. From a process perspective, again, it goes back to having that understanding your organization, having a fit for purpose governance structure. Can you expand upon that just a bit?
Yeah, sure. And we see this. PLMs are often the history of traditional PLM systems is coming from auto, aero, high-tech, defense industries, and these are highly regulated industries. They have to conform to FAA, FDA standards, and so on. But we found that engineers, really did not enjoy their PLM experience in those systems, but they're mandated by IT and the C-suite, and they were satisfied because they saw that they could enforce governance and kind of ignored the fact that individual users or work groups were not enjoying life with this PLM system. What often was not visible to the C-suite or IT management was the bad behaviors that occurred as an outcome to meet deadlines, and engineers trying to do the right thing for the company, which is what led to a lot of corporate IP and decision making being outside, not captured in the PLM system, existing on spreadsheets, existing on people's C drives, on their personal laptop, on thumb drives. So, on the face of it, it looks like we've got end-to-end governance, all of the rules and policies baked in and touching every stakeholder. Reality is a lot of leakage out of that system and unhappy use. And we've tried to address that, like our focus and our model around the idea and the creative process. We're trying to stimulate the imagineering process, believing that the more imagination that goes on, the more iterations possible, more innovation is captured into product development, but needing the governance. And of course, having those two in balance, that harmony, as you call it, is essential. And that's really what we're striving to do here, which is different to the history of PLM.
Yeah, and it's that low disruption, right? It's the ability to understand that most of these organizations, and I would say the majority, if not all, still need to maintain day-to-day operations, right? It's not like you can stop working, but you need to be able to assess. You need to be able to actually communicate in parallel, and that's kind of the gist of our calibration model on the side. It's a very seamless way to understand where you're at, where you're going, and what you're going to need to invest in from a true OCM standpoint, your process excellence, and then the true digital transformation. This is where a lot of companies start, right? The promise of a solution that's going to fix step 1 through 6. And the reality, we say, you could do things in parallel. They're all integrated and intertwined. But for us, it truly is about that low disruption, tangible. It's that phase deployment. You call it kind of one work group at a time. We outline the full journey, but we build that journey in manageable phases, right? You're going to need some rest stops along the journey to monitor where you're at and adjust from that. So that's a little bit about our true north, and it sounds like it overlays nicely with kind of the Upchain mantra.
Yeah, it does. And frankly, when I first saw this, Joe, when I was new to IPX, I thought, oh my God, this is like the big five, right? This is a $100 million transformation thing that's going to go on for years. But when I later, subsequent, understood that is the word there, calibration. It's not stop, start, transform, or with 100 highly paid consultants and doing it all for you. That's where the fit or the mapping comes to what IPX, what Upchain is doing with our software, is enabling that. So, and we've seen some very successful outcomes where you've gone in, and it could be 10 years ago in a big corporation, you trained an engineer in CM2, one of the CM2 modules. Now they've been promoted. They're now VP or senior VP or C-suite in a Fortune 100 company. But they tend to, what I've found is they end up really kind of religious believers in the principles of CM2. And now that you're able to bring these services to calibrate, not just end-to-end transform the whole organization, And even just honestly, just that step one, the ecosystem assessment, that's an extremely valuable tool because these customers don't understand what they've got and how far off or how aligned, skewed they are towards one system of preference in terms of their tools, processes, data structure, and organization. So that independent, impartial insights that they can gain is often the very valuable starting point. And then actual events and plans and projects where we fit in and IPX come back in and do the guidance. That's a great second step.
Yeah, and you know, the one thing I'm proud of is the ability that this model allows any size company to really dial in and to really experience true NPV, net present value, which, you know, of course is the ROI holy grail. It's something we do. We've actually have a ROI model as part of this that comes with offering, and it's supported by a third party. So it's something we don't do on our own. We bring someone in, and it stands with, you know, the best CFOs in the world, and that brings it to, you know, I mean, again, we've championed this with some of the best and brightest. You know, I was really proud at the, you know, James, you were at the Connex 19, and you were able to see this panel of industry visionaries talking about the future of the digital enterprise, and what they discuss and what you could, you know, listen for on your own is everything we've just talked about: having the ability to have true traceability, identify your workforce needs, pick the right solutions for your platform. You're not going to find just one tool. And, you know, and it applies to our Congress. You know, a lot of people know IPX has a cross-industry, it's agnostic from us group that talks about what's needed for Industry 4.0. And that's the people, the processes, the tools, and the data. And the nice thing about this Congress is each one of them has a CM2P, that's our professional certification. And that really tells you from universities such as Purdue, you got Northrop, the importance of having process and system excellence and having that integrated, having a very structured DNA, which leads me to just kind of closing all this out. You know, I got introduced to Upchain earlier this year, really kind of been following it. You, of course, were at ConX. You're going through your CM2 certification effort right now with our team at IPX. And here recently, you've won an award in Canada. You want to talk a little bit to close it out, James?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're very proud that Deloitte came in and called us up, and then they came in and they really didn't understand PLM, but they asked us a lot of detailed business fundamental questions and what our customers and what are we doing for our customers. And yeah, we're very proud. Just I think last week, might have been the week before, they announced that we're an award winner in their Fast 50, Technology Fast 50 Companies to Watch program. So I guess, you know, it's evidence we're getting a lot of visibility through Fortune 100 customers and now sort of analysts, thought leaders, and sort of investors and big, you know, one of the big five like Deloitte recognizing us as a relatively small startup software company is you know, we're very honored to have that award and be recognized like that.
Well, congratulations, it's well deserved. I've had some time to spend with your leadership, John, the CEO, in Toronto as part of the assessment of Upchain and the solution, and truly are a good company. I think it's great to see a company with such passion for what you're providing your clients or your partners. And you know, it's that whole slogan, from imagination to change, that's where companies are trying to get back, right? It's get out of this life of corrective action and deviation and waivers, have the right processes, the right systems to support the day in and day out, but really empower innovation. And, you know, with that, James, I want to say thank you for taking the time. It was a great session, always a good discussion. Enjoy spending some time with you. Look forward to potentially circling back in 6 months and seeing where Upchain is. And
yeah, we'd love to.
And with that, Dee, I think we have some time for some questions for James or myself, if we have any.
Yes, I think we have time for one or two. Again, if we don't get to all of your questions during this time, put them in the questions box and they'll be answered following the webinar. The first one is a two-part question, so this one may be the one we take solely. It concerns integration between PLM and ERP. They're asking, how are MRP triggers and events managed between the PLM platform and the ERP system? And on the back half, does the PLM integration team configure or do the certified ERP systems integrators lead implementation of the business requirements?
That's a very specific question. So I don't know what ERP system I've got. I don't know what size it is or the level of transactions in a bidirectional integration. So it's very hard to answer such a specific question without knowing the industry, the scale, the type of ERP. But what if it's ERP, then let me just take a kind of a stab at a common case that our customers have. They might have SAP. They may have 5 locations. They could be in discrete engineering or even high tech. And so what we do there, first, we do not have a large professional services organization. We have a customer success organization, Partner Enablement. We call our customers partners. And we use an underlying industry standard integration platform from MuleSoft that was in 2018, I think, acquired by Salesforce. So it's got a very big financial underpinning. In our opinion, it's the best integration platform. And through that, we have almost 200 different integrations, and we have built our own, the deep CAD plugins. When it comes to ERP, we rely on the MuleSoft integration platform, which has integrations into SAP, for example. There is a subscription fee, I think, when you do integrate to SAP. That's what SAP require. Now, as to what gets transacted, it's whatever you need, and to which, is it a push model? Is it a pull model? Is it both? We don't know, but typically clients would be that have events and triggers baked into a workflow. You can have what typically in that interface into SAP, it might be a 3-stage interface. It could be mandatory push at any event. It could be, and that's fully automatic. It could be semi-automatic, meaning a parking lot is presented to a person responsible, and they see all of the documents, all of the items, and they say yes, 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 so all 10 of them. Or it could be a fully manual, where any user of any system in Upchain can elect to push to the ERP system. And basically the reciprocal of that is also possible coming from SAP. The same model, it can exist, that fully automatic, semi-automatic, or fully manual process of interoperability on files, documents, items, bonds, whatever is appropriate.
Okay, we'll take one more. This question is, are there any recommendations for change management and getting people out of old habits for new PLM and ERP implementations?
You had asked Joe to perhaps respond to that one.
Yeah, I'm smiling. I think it's the one. It's a great question. It's actually the one element that pretty much every organization has in common. They underestimate what's required to change legacy mindsets and mindsets that have been around for a long time, not necessarily incorrect, but they've been formed over poor processes, poor system deployments. They've had this promise. Many of our clients and customers and partners have heard me use the analogy. It's like going to your favorite restaurant and ordering a dinner that looks like it's going to be amazing, and you're going to pay for that, and the promise of having a good experience is there, and then you end up getting food poisoning, right? That's not a pleasurable experience. And if that happens more than once, you're not going to go back to that restaurant. And for some of our resources, our internal customers, our employees, we've let them down. And I think part of the initiative, the change management on the organizational side, you need to have the right business engagement strategy. And part of that strategy might be saying, we're sorry. We know we tried this. We know we attempted. We messed up. We're doing it differently this time. And this is how we're going to do it differently. This is how we're going to manage the PLM and ERP deployment this go around. We're going to have the right users. We're going to have stakeholders that understand all of the elements. And we're going to be proactive in our communication. So to me, it's your approach. It's also understanding that you might not have the resources capable of doing that. It's not a sales job for me to say that's what IPX's expertise is. It's managing these types of initiatives, the OCM, integrating and intertwining the initiative from the process, the OCM, and the systems, and ensuring it's successful. And that's okay. And that allows you to free up resources to do what they should be doing, which is designing the next best product, ensuring the product you're getting ready to release is fit for purpose. I mean, it's one thing we haven't touched on, which we still have products in today's world from the best companies, some of the best companies on paper that have some of the most advanced PLM and ERP systems, but they're still releasing products into the field today that kill people. Why is that? And I think that's something, for me, it's an easy answer. It's a bit of arrogance. It's not going back and assessing yourself, not looking at the processes you've been using for 30 years that your people have built multiple workarounds for. It's going in and doing that work and then making sure you have your right requirements for your systems and your processes and deploying that. And just working together as a unit. We've forgotten the ability or the importance of working as a unit in some of our companies, and we need to get that back.
Yep, exactly right.
Thank you. I think that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you all for joining us. Look for the recording of this session and any answers to questions that we didn't get to in your email inbox from IPX or Upchain or both. Thank you again to Upchain for joining us today and sharing such rich content. IPX recently released an IPX Perspective white paper based on Upchain's cloud-based SaaS solution. That's available for download on our website at ipxhq.com. And for more information on Upchain, please visit upchain.com. Thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.